You're listening to The Kick on Longbox.fm. The Kick is for an adult audience. The Kick may contain certain material that may be unsuitable for sensitive ears. Listener discretion is advised.
Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Ni le bien qu'on m'a fait, ni le mal, ça m'est bien égal. Non, rien de rien. Non, je ne regrette rien. Car ma vie, car mes joies, aujourd'hui.
News, politics, and discussion. This is The Kick.
What you say, what you say, what you say, what? We'll come like a fly.
Well, The Kick is here. I think I got it changed up right this week.
I like it.
All right, good. It's The Kick here on Longbox.fm, brought to you by Riley's Brewing, of course.
Thank you.
And we're back, week 2, trying to knock this one out.
Yeah.
Now, we had a whole show lined up. We knew what we were going to talk about. And then things changed, and we'll get to that here in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But if you guys want to participate, and I know tonight's show, I've had a lot of feedback from people. The phone number is 492-0450. You can tweet us or Skype us, Longbox FM on both. Van is going to be live tweeting as we go. Ben is going to be watching the Skype, and then Kevin, you're probably just going to make people mad, right?
Oh.
Well, you can't give him a job that he's not accustomed to. That's for damn sure.
So, anyways, we got a very serious show laid out for you guys tonight. Now, sorry for being late. The server all messed up, and this is I freak out and I go crazy. So I'm going to have some beer, some fine Rileys, and hopefully calm down. You guys are going to be helping take over the show. Okay. We are going to be talking with our guests tonight. We got Karen Adele Scott in. She is the executive director of TransCare. And obviously, we're going to be talking about the Orlando shootings. We're going to be talking about some gun control, some stupid comments on the Twitters and the Facebooks. People just showing how ass-hatty they are. Is that a word?
Yes, that's entirely a word. In fact, hashtag it.
All right. Well, America showed their true colors in the last 24 hours, and it's just amazing to watch people announce who they are and how stupid they are and how we don't need to be a part of it. We're hopefully going to learn some things tonight as we're going to be dealing with the transgender, if we can get to it tonight, transgender bathroom issues going on in the Clovis Unified and then just nationwide in general. All that's going on. We are going to take one quick break, come right back, and we'll be talking with our guest, Karen Adele Scott here. It's The Kick on Longbox.fm.
You're listening to The Kick on Longbox.fm.
Doesn't it suck to run out of cell phone minutes? I agree. So if you got no minutes to spare and you still want to share, hit up Longbox.fm on Skype by calling Longbox FM. You'll get Dirty Dowdy and the rest of the Longbox crew. So whether you got minutes to share or none to spare, hit us up on Skype at Longbox FM.
All right, I think that was quick enough. Sorry, had to get the final adjustments on here. This is The Kick here on Longbox.fm, and we're getting the habit of this.
Yeah.
So, anyways, missed the mic. There you go.
Okay. Next time.
Yeah.
I guess. That one's for the ether.
Anyways, to go around, we know our cast and crew here. Star Kevin and Ben and Vanna. We also have our guest tonight, Karen Adele Scott, who's hanging out with us. And you are the executive director of TransCare. And please share with us who and all, just a little backstory on you.
Well, thank you for having me tonight. It's really nice to be with your audience, and it's good to be with you. I'm the executive director and founder of TransCare, which is a volunteer organization. We're working on going national, and we're working on a huge, helpful website. TransCare is an organization that helps transgender people with their transitions, and we stand up for their rights. Helping them with their transitions saves their lives, and so the goal of TransCare, the ultimate goal, is to save lives, especially from our high rate of suicide.
All right, and now obviously you very important and very involved in what's going on a lot in the Valley, but obviously, and of course, the switch in the whole show. What we were going to do and what changed in the last 24 hours, the shootings in Orlando. Captain McAsshat, I refuse to say his name. And this is just a side
Why's
thing.
everyone looking at me?
Because you're the killer. Everybody, obviously, if you've been around a TV or mobile device, any kind of media, you know that something happened yesterday. The shooting in Orlando, the gay club Pride. Over 50 dead now and another 50 or so injured.
Yeah.
Now,
It was at Pulse.
yeah, and I refuse to acknowledge the name of the person, and just this is a personal thing for me that I absolutely hate. I grew up with the Columbine, and I remember researching, and I was all about it. I think I did something in college on a paper on the whole thing. I had the magazine, Entertainment Weekly or something that came out that week, and they had full 8.5 by 11 shots of both the shooters, and then little yearbook shots, all like dotting around the edges and the pages leading through. So I think it's glorifying the shooter to say his name, so we can just call him Asshat or Donkey Banger, anything like that.
Well,
I'm down.
interesting
Pig ass.
The interesting thing about that is when they initially named when they did the initial count for the victims of the shooting in Pulse, they actually said 50 and then retracted to 49 because then they said, well, we don't consider the shooter a victim, which is absolutely appropriate. So
Absolutely true. So, anyways, this whole thing went down. Now, Karen, I think you have the best view of all this because you were actually here in Fresno working with a vigil, or
Right.
go ahead. And,
We got together and we had it was Gay Central Valley got together and with TransCare and other groups, and we went out and we tweeted like crazy and Facebooked like crazy to get people out to commemorate the lives of those that were lost and also the lives of those people that are still injured and they're trying to recover. There's a lot of people in critical condition, and that's just really important to realize. And so we got together all of the local people who would come out that were different theological backgrounds. We had Buddhists, Sikhs, we had Muslims, we had Christians, we had Unitarians, and we got out to show everybody that we need to stop violence, we need to stop hate, and we need to not allow the bigotry to kill people by inflaming people, and that human lives matter. And so we had over 400 people show up in the tower yesterday. They literally went down both sides of the streets. They completely filled up the Tower Theater's entryway. And it was an amazing, amazing showing from Central California in solidarity with Orlando.
Absolutely. And so with that, too, I mean, I guess the biggest observation to make is that in the wake of a tragedy like this, I mean, you got to agree. I mean, just seeing some of the pictures and some of the footage from the folks that were out there down in the tower yesterday, I mean, you're not just talking about people from different theological backgrounds, but you're talking skin color, you're talking credo, you're talking about, men, women, and children. You're talking about families that got out there to support and people that felt the need to express the fact that they were angry and sad and, honestly affected by what happened clear across the country.
We were affected because we're all Americans. This was the most violent gun killing in the history of the United States. The only number of deaths greater than this recently is 9/11. This was terrible. And as a person who is a major in the Cadet Corps and a former deputy sheriff, my sheepdog gene that wants to protect is just lit up on this. And I'm infuriated that a person would somehow think that they were going to love their God and have their God love them more by murdering that many innocent people. It's beyond my ability to understand it.
That's so ass backwards. The I love God, and to prove how much I love God and how religious I am, I got to murder people that I hate.
It's honestly, it's just like really depressing where society is, like ethically, morally, just spiritually.
But I think it's decades, not even decades, but I think it's hundreds of years of conditioning in the making. Because I think that as long as systems like religion and politics have existed and divided people for as long as they have, I mean, you've got people that are warring with one another over and over and over again. I mean, yes, was the Orlando massacre, was it tragic? Absolutely. But these things have happened over the years, and it's all because people are divided on such very black and white and dichotic issues, right?
Well, and it's also theological. If you think about it, I mean, I can hang out with a bunch of Buddhists and none of them are going to go out and murder somebody.
It's also well publicized in like news. It's almost an issue they want us to like be completely separate on, you know what I mean? Like it's so public. I don't know what I'm saying. I always feel like society's kind of kind of
reacting.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's all part of everything that's
is,
been thrown in our faces.
Absolutely.
If you think the media's main job...
What I mean is, like, whenever there's a story about race, the news will just cover it and just try to fuel this, like... this narrative of these people that are opposed to each other and fighting each other. Like, they want us to kind of...
You mean like Trayvon Martin's an innocent black man?
But I mean, I understand that's, you know, that those are tragedies, but I almost feel like a part of it is to blame for, like, the news and how they sensationalize things. And I'm not saying they're sensationalizing this at all. But I mean, just the whole issue, like, with, you know, gays and their rights and stuff like that. I almost feel like that's an issue that's been, you know, that they... it's good ratings for them, and it's almost over.
Well, the unfortunate thing is we live in an era where, you know, if you're not getting media ratings, then you're not really relevant. So, I mean, any media outlet that puts a news story on the air and says, hey, look at this, because guess what? A young black man was killed in Florida or Chicago or New York City or California, wherever it is. An entire, you know, cross-section of individuals who identify as a certain, you know, sexual orientation. They were now just massacred on Saturday night in Orlando.
I know. How about just like 50 innocent people were murdered last night?
See,
you know what I mean?
Well, and the thing about it was, you have to understand that if you call a place a gay club, it's not just a gay club.
Yeah,
A large number of people that come into what's deemed a gay club are straight people. They come there because it's a lot of fun to go in and watch the hilarity of a silly drag show and to have good beer with people that are happy. And a lot of the people we're going to find out that were at the Pulse Club were not gay, lesbian, or transgender. They were probably just people that were there on Latin night to just watch a funny show.
Amen. You know, as a comedian, I perform locally at a Fab in Fresno, and I go there every Wednesday for like karaoke sometimes, and it just really offends me when they just are like, oh, this is a gay club. Because why can't they just say club? You know what? Like, regardless of gender, regardless of anything that like could define these people, 50, like we were saying, innocent people is what matters. And then I was watching
Fab's case, they are pretty gay there. I mean, it's
no,
Pink
very mixed.
I mean, it's an awesome place. I love it.
Mixed.
I go there all the time, and I am so straight.
Yeah, but they do have, you know, unicorns with rainbows and stuff around them. I mean, it's not like it's openly gay friendly.
Dude, you've performed comedy there too.
Absolutely, the place is awesome. Definitely.
You know, I just and it bugs me too, because I was watching the news this morning, and they keep saying, "Oh, we don't want to say his name. We don't want to say his name." You know, they're not cool like Longbox FM, where like we're calling him an asshat. But like they keep saying, "Oh, we're not going to say his name," and then they say his name, and then they show a picture. And I feel like, you know, like being the Republican on the show, it's like the Republican side is just like, "Oh, we need to do the whole Muslim
cannon fodder for both parties to just do the battle against."
And they're going to target it as, oh, we need to identify these Muslims. It should have been caught back when he was, you know,
and we
being
need
reported.
This kind of
security. And it's just like that side is going to say that, and then the other side is going to be like, we need gun control. And I mean, regardless of your position on guns, I think we could all agree, like, I am so for guns, but at the same time, that needs to be a lot more regulated. I think that should just be common sense.
That's why I'm like so just disappointed in society. It's that I feel like poor people are just kind of forced to be in one camp or the other because it's just so shoved down your throat. You know,
that's political correctness.
I know, but you know,
we're putting everyone in a box. It's a gay club. That's a Muslim club. It has to be.
People who would never really even give a shit about your sexual orientation until it was kind of like put in your face, like there's this battle, and now we have teams, and you've picked your team, and they're just victims of that, and they just root for their team wholeheartedly.
The scary and sad thing about the club where the mass shooting took place, Pulse, it was named for the pulse of the brother of the owner who died of HIV, died of AIDS. And so they named it Pulse because of his heartbeat that they missed because he died. And so it was named for a person who died because of a terrible disease. And, you know, so this man went in there and totally changed that. And it's absolutely wrong. And we can blame society. We can talk about gun control. But really, why was the heart of this man like it was? Why did he feel the desire to, first of all, hate people? What made him say, that's wrong and I hate it? And then the second thing was, who motivated him with what they told him to form his belief system that he chose to believe, to go out there and think that somehow he was doing God a great service and performing some sort of a duty that God would love by murdering and injuring all those people. That's where the problem is. It's not in society. It's not in gun control. It's in who cocked and loaded Mr. Asshat.
So,
well, the point the ultimate point, though, is, and you're exactly right, because I think that it's not in gun control. It really isn't, because gun control, I think, is irrelevant. It's off the table at this point. I mean, the man could have walked in
with a bomb.
With a bomb. Or a knife.
Could have driven his car through and rammed in at 30 people.
Listen, there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat. I mean, I hate to say that in the wake of something like this, but there really is 1,000 different ways that you could take a life. And I think that everybody jumping on, because I've seen it in my news feeds and everything else over the last 24 to 48 hours. I think it's asinine. I think that for somebody to get out there and say, well, this guy had a gun. He had an assault rifle or a machine gun, whatever he had at the time. I think it's asinine to say that it's a gun control issue. I think that's off the table. What I think it is, I think it's a humanity issue. I think it's a humane issue. I think it's the ability of a person to make a choice, whether you are a certain skin color or a certain religious belief or a certain party affiliation. I mean, you have people that take lives every single day in the name of, well, fuck you, I just don't understand you, I don't tolerate you, I'm going to take your life right now, just for that simple reason. Right. There's take the weapons out of the picture.
It's a lack of value of fellow human life, period.
I will say this.
Absolutely.
There are people who profit from people thinking a certain way.
Absolutely.
And the people that do those things, who think those things, who have such visceral belief about their convictions to go out and do something like that, are people who have been kind of fed a narrative by people who profit from them having
you can go all the way back to Adolf Hitler. When he did Kristallnacht, what he did was he made the Germans hate a group of people. If he could get them to hate the Jews, they hated a group of people, he could rally all of these people together against a cause that he created in the first place. And it's the same thing.
And we're going to talk about terrorism
the same
tonight.
Thing's happening with some of the people who are saying, if you go out and you hate America, or you go out and you hate this group of people, it happened to be the LGBT community in Orlando yesterday, then I'm empowered, because when you hate people, you drop down to the very visceral level of the lowest denominator of medulla oblongata thinking, and you react in fear, and you are controllable.
Amen.
Yeah. And that's exactly what happened there. And it's happening in tens of thousands right now, where they're being made to fear things, and thus the leaders who are making them fear in the first place can control them. And the same people who are fearful will start sending money in to the people who are making the fear.
So I've got a few things. Vanna,
please do not Merriam-Webster us tonight. I will smack you.
Nope. If that happens again, you're just gonna have to suffer.
I just gotta say, I love Karen over here. Yes. I love the passion, and I love
with her.
Yeah,
backing
really
up on
good
this
vibe.
one.
Sharp,
okay, so a few
sharp.
things. The media. Back to not wanting to say this guy's name. There's a reason the media is so complicit in not wanting to say this guy's name.
Krusty Pig Butthole Boy.
Krusty Pig Butthole Boy Senior.
He who shall not be named.
The media tends almost 100% of the time to lean very, very, very strong to the left, and the left is undoubtedly pro-Islamic.
Just really quickly, tell that to Fox News, man. Because if they're leaning to the left, then I'm a fucking space alien. I swear to God.
They're the one on the
Fox. Okay, so anyway, Fox News is just as bad on the right side. So this isn't from Fox News. This is an agenda on the media to not push the idea that the person who did this is any kind of Muslim descent. This is why everyone jumped immediately on gun control.
I'll say this. I don't even watch TV. I don't have a TV, really. I'm like out of the loop in like what's happening in society. I've learned enough about society to know that it's just an insane madness. And in some way, in order to maintain my sanity, I had to sever myself from...
Of course.
And I have no idea what's even happened until the moment I sat here and you told me.
Well, here you go.
But it's just, it's like another one of those things. It's the reason why I've extricated myself from this society almost a little bit.
Well, welcome back a little bit. Okay, hang on. No, I was not done. No, I got interrupted. Stop.
Kevin, you have the floor.
Thank you.
You have the floor.
Or even the
First
table.
time I move my mouth. I'll take the whole table. The guy's name is Omar Mir Sadiq Mateen.
Thanks, man.
I say that because it is important to get facts out when there's facts in the discussion. That's it. It has nothing to do with us not wanting to say the guy's name or not. That's the guy's name. He is a son of an Afghan refugee, a known Muslim. He voted Democrat. He was actually an employed security guard with a guard card. And another thing we touched on was the whole terrorism surveillance stuff. My question is, we have obviously sacrificed a tremendous amount of personal liberty and security since September 11th of 2001. What the hell did it do to prevent any of this whatsoever?
Absolutely nothing.
This is a specific domestic terrorist attack that we were told for the last 15 goddamn years that all we had to do was give up
Amen.
more of our shit, and this would fucking stop. And it did not a goddamn thing. What would have happened, what would have worked at least better than 50 dead people and 50 more injured people, is if one or two other people in that entire crowd had a fire weapon to fire back at the son of a bitch.
You understand
we've
this
been
is a
talking about
breakdown
that.
of the do you understand this is a breakdown of the intelligence system, right? Because this guy Mateen,
Well,
he
they
was
could have
interviewed.
stopped it.
He was
to be
interviewed
honest.
at least twice in the last 5 years on suspicion of having terrorist ties. Now, taking that into account, even though, and I understand that they said, because there were the press conferences where they said, well, the facts were inconclusive or the evidence was inconclusive, so we had nothing to hold him on, we had nothing to charge him on, we couldn't necessarily put him on a watch list, so on and so forth. But I think just in general, if the guy was allowed to obtain weapons in a time that we live in now, after he was already suspected, not once, but twice, of being a terrorist-tied individual.
You got to be careful.
And I will even tell you.
No. And I understand
because
that this is crossing into, like
he's
crushing
Middle
on somebody's
Eastern.
civil liberties.
He's Muslim or Islamic, whatever. If he's been checked out a couple times and they have nothing, to not allow him to get a gun, to not allow him the rights that you and I could get, would be an attack on him. And that's where now we have to make sure everybody's
I'll tell you
safe,
this
protected,
right now.
You're
gets
exactly
all the
right.
rights the
Yeah,
same.
I'm telling you this. If you've even seen the movie Citizen 4, you're well aware of what the NSA is capable of. And I'm telling you, if he's been formally suspected by authorities and had some sort of formal suspicion, the NSA has flagged him as a very high threat domestic terrorist. And their ability to capture every bit of information about his life is known to the government. Mm-hmm. And their ability to stop this was probably very good.
And
I
again-
worked as a cadet corps range master, and I've been in charge of lots of people shooting lots of guns. And I've been Top Gun when I shot numerous times. And I understand firearms. None of them go off without a brain behind the firearm. Somebody cocked and loaded Mr. Asshat. Somebody cocked and loaded him. He didn't start that way. He started as a little boy, like you started as a little boy. And Ben, you were a little boy at one time. And he started that way. And somebody at some point said things to him, and he inculcated those values into him. And then that changed him to make him want to go out and kill people based on a whim. And he planned it, and then he did it. And so, really, we can talk about firearms, we can talk about guns, we can talk about society, we can talk about all these things, but I want to know, who is it that told him that if he went out and did these things, that somehow God would love him more? And why did he do them? What's the theology behind him choosing to murder people? Was that to ingratiate himself to a God who he couldn't feel would take him to heaven other than to get God's attention? What's the theology behind it?
I don't think it's that specific. I think it's more broad in general.
No, I think she's getting close.
I think it goes a level out in that this is just somebody who had a void, who needed to fill it, who needed something. Maybe he was an outcast, bullied, picked on, anything, whatever it is, that then latched onto this religion that might be taught by somebody not properly licensed to teach it right, if you will.
So you can think about the same thing. We had wonderful little German children in the 1930s, and they went through the Hitler schools, and they became SS officers, and they murdered people, and they killed people, and they gassed people, and they put people in retorts. What changed those little children was a fascist ideal that they would be better if they acted in this certain way. And that's what's happening. It's a fascism.
No,
it's a neo-fascism that's based
socialism.
around a theology.
You could
Socialism
say
is a
that.
religion.
You could say that, but then again, at the same time, you have to look at it from the respects of, yes, look, there are lots of buzzwords being thrown around, right? Terrorist, Muslim, Islam, this, that, and the other. I mean, the guy's name alone, right? We didn't say it until Kevin mentioned it, which I think it's certainly important at this point.
I've already forgot it.
Right. But
pig
the thing
butthole
is,
play.
but all these buzzwords are getting thrown around, right? And buzzwords, we live in a hashtag era where if we buzzword certain things, they become little snippets of information, and that information eventually, on some level, becomes a reality for us, right? So what are we doing? We're taking buzzwords, we're stringing them together, and without the filler in the middle, we're basically saying, well, we're picking out Islam, we're picking out terrorists, we're picking out anti-gay, we're picking out all these things and cramming them to one thing.
We're not picking these out. These are the facts.
Well, here's the thing.
But if you were to talk to many Muslims like I have, Most Muslims that I've ever met are the nicest,
Yep.
kindest, most hospitable people that I've ever met in my life. It's the Wahhabist trained ones. It's the ones who have been trained that violence is the answer, and if you don't convert, we have every right to kill you. The rare version that's actually taught through the madrasas through Saudi Arabia, but it's the Wahhabists that are the ones that are the problem. They're literally the cancer of the world at this point.
Right.
The rest of the Islamic world, which is millions and millions and millions of people, are awesome,
Absolutely.
awesome people, and they're being murdered at a higher rate than we are by the
And
same
you know what?
people.
And I've taken the social media in defense of the general Muslim population, because I think that there's a general misconception of, what is it to be a Muslim, and when you hear the word Muslim, does it become like this dirty taboo word that all of a sudden you are now the enemy and the outcast from everybody else that doesn't think like you or act like you. But again, what I'm saying is, Kevin, part of what you're saying is right, because yes, we're not just necessarily picking words out of the air, but what we're doing is we are taking these facts that we're given, and at this time, do we know if he was a Muslim terrorist who just hated Americans in general? Do we know if it
Doesn't
was
matter.
But it
if he
does
was
matter.
Muslim, matters,
But it does.
matters if he was-
It does.
He declared
it does-
allegiance to ISIS in a phone call.
But
He
What
did.
matters
He
is
did.
what
He did.
happened.
He did. And so to clarify the point, what I'm saying is this. It was a terrorist attack, no matter which way you look at it, on American citizens, no matter which way you look at it, inside of a club where people went to have a good time, right? It didn't matter. Going
It was a
back to your-
gun-free zone, by the way.
Well, and of course, there's the issue of that, too.
Wait, then how did he get away with it? Sorry.
Right.
Right.
Criminals don't obey laws. Oh, there's an interesting point.
But to finish my point, what I'll say is this. It was a terrorist attack on American citizens and or residents in whatever the case and capacity it may be, in a club where everybody went to have a good time on a Saturday night when you would least expect it. This
Latin
wasn't
night, too.
This wasn't a Tuesday morning, and
Latin night, they had a crowd there.
All right.
right.
Vic?
And to end it, saying this, what happened is a tragedy. We just need to be careful. We need to be careful about how we classify this.
Yes.
Because aside from being just a simple terrorist attack, yes, look at the location, think about the people that were there, but then take that and run with it as you may. Right? We're left. It's left as an open-ended situation.
Vic, and then me.
All right, Karen, I kind of want to, in a way, answer the question, respond to the statements you were making earlier about who is it that put these ideas into these kids' minds and made them do these things and target these people. And I had mentioned that I think it's more general and broad, and I'm of a worldview, that there is the ruling class and the serving class, and it's been that way since there were people. And it's been in different forms. You've had the king and you've had the peasants. And although we don't have kings, we still do. We have the Bushes. We have the Kurds, the Clintons. We have these royal dynasties that are still... And the truth is, sadly, is that people are still servants. And the mind frame that they have is... there's a ruling class whose object is to keep the peasant class divided amongst themselves, and they have about 100,000 different things in different ways they could divide the people: sexual orientation, race, religion, all these things. And it's just constantly fed to the populace through television. And that's really where it comes from. I don't think there's any one group specifically targeting. I think it's the ruling class keeping the people divided amongst each other. And I'm sure, like I said with the NSA, they had every capability of stopping this. And I don't believe they want to, because I think that just gives us more... That just fans the flame of our division. And I said to you, Kevin, the reason I butted in, I don't listen to the internet you don't listen to the internet? I don't listen to the internet. I've gotten out of it because I got out of it, and I can just imagine what the internet's like. And like the hate from, I remember I tried for so long on Facebook. I was one of those person that was like I wanted to proselytize you and convert you to a capitalist to see that there's a morality to it, and that really socialism is their mechanism, their tool for controlling you. And I don't think it's specific. I think it's just there's a ruling class, and we are all subject. And most people don't see it like fish don't recognize the water.
It doesn't matter who's on top, though. Someone's still got to
It
make their
doesn't
own
matter
decision.
because really there's a select few people on the top.
I have to say that, if anybody is extremely wealthy and they have lots of money, that they'd be an absolute fool to not use their money to perpetuate their money and power.
Precisely.
I agree with you on that. But I think that the British found out really quickly that we weren't a class of serfs that couldn't do anything when we kicked their butt and sent them all back to England.
But
and I think that tradition has carried on in the United States for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And I think that you're stating that there's a ruling class telling everybody what to do doesn't take into account how stiff-necked and bullheaded Americans are.
I think it
we
doesn't
will
take
not
into
be
Wish
account-
ruled.
to see. We
I don't-
have the power.
I don't think it takes into account people's lack of knowledge about money and the Federal Reserve System and how much of a slave everybody really
But here's the
is.
thing. I mean, when we talk about the Federal Reserve System and big government, we are
birdwatching.
getting away from the point. We are getting away from the point because when it comes down to it, if you look at the landscape as it is, I mean, it's no matter where the power, no matter where the control is applied from, I should say. I think that the landscape right now is very vitriol. I think it's very hateful. I think there's a lot of people out there that are just very condemning because they don't understand the landscape. I think that there's so many people that are ethnocentric into themselves that they just don't care to go outside of what they know. I mean, people travel in very concentric circles in sense of where they go and who they associate with and what they do. I mean, everybody's got that daily triangle of, work, home, and maybe that one spot where they go to catch a drink or whatever
Two
the hell
things.
it may be.
I believe that after 12 or 13 years of government education, people are taught enough to learn how to react emotionally.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Everything else is what the media decides they want to do.
Sure.
Information is power, and they've got control up to 95% of it. Everybody is subject to. There's nothing that gets through the television.
Public
that isn't
school is
filtered.
the engine,
6
and
or
the
7
media
times.
is
And
the steering wheel.
the filter engine in every single television studio is the editor that decides what's going to go on the air, how much of it's going to go on the air, and
Precisely.
what the cut's going to be.
Precisely.
And there's always one or two people that do that, and so you have to understand that that's a reality.
The second thing I wanted to touch on was earlier about the theology, because we were talking about Muslim extremism and so forth, and I know saying this stuff makes me super popular. My brother's wife is Muslim, so there's a connection here that I might get to have a conversation later. But I have some more stats here. This is from Breitbart.com. The Husseini Islamic Center of Stanford, Florida. Karen, let me know if you've heard about this. Invited a speaker, Sheikh Farrakh something
this
else,
asshole. I heard about
to
this.
speak at their mosque.
Yeah, he's the one that promoted the hatred of the gays and lesbians.
Exactly.
guy.
This is
All
for-
gays should die.
This is for everyone else listening here. He says the killing of homosexuals is a compassionate thing to do. In 2013 speech, Sheikh Salak said this regarding gays. Death is the sentence. We know there's nothing to be embarrassed about this. Death is the sentence. We have that compassion for people. With homosexuals, it's the same. Out of compassion, let's get rid of them now. Now, obviously, I don't agree with any of this, but this comes from the Sharia law doctrines that these Muslim countries are presided over. And when this guy calls for the death of homosexuals based on these tenets, this guy's an expert. He's not just saying this. This is actually what they do believe. So when you talk about the theology that loads and cocks this gun, I support you on this one. Islamic law also mandates death sentence for blasphemers and apostates. Right now, there's 10 Islamic countries where gays are legally allowed to be put to death. And a poll taken in Britain, 50% of all British Muslims think that gay sex should be illegal.
Is it 10 now? I thought it was 8.
The last stat I got was 10.
Okay.
And that was as of today.
Okay.
And this is kind of counteracting the argument that these, extreme Islamic terrorist guys are the outliers of this society when there's evidence that says otherwise, that the religion does not entirely preach the peace that it says it
Well,
does.
neither does Christianity or any of the
Yeah.
other
No, you're
ones.
correct, but here's now I know again this is not
Christianity's got some
I'm
messed
not-
up stuff in there.
I'm
man.
not saying
all
this,
of them-
Even
all of them are
Dr.
systems of
James
control.
Dobson just came out and said, where were the men standing up to protect their wives in the bathrooms? 100 years ago, people would have had a gun. And what's James Dobson, a Focus on the Family, saying when he said 100 years ago, people would have had a gun? What's he saying with that? What is he
advocating
allowing
violence.
by saying that? So
Yeah.
you can see the parallel to what you're saying with
Definitely.
Islam is identical. And Dr. James Dobson would never condone murdering anyone, but he said that, and there are people that are going to say, oh, I might be doing God a favor if I go kill Karen Adele Scott, that transgender woman, because she's leading people astray.
Yeah, we don't endorse that here on the Kick.
Okay, again, so I'm not
follow her.
I'm not in defense of certain
Not
things. This is
hashtag.
Karen
these are
Adele
just
Scott on
these are
Facebook.
the facts
Find
that
her.
I'm putting out here. As far as Christianity is concerned, the worst that I could think of is the Westboro Baptist Church as far as their vitriol and their venom, right?
Yes.
good
I'm not,
God.
unless there's somebody else worse that came along.
Old Testament.
Liberty
That is-
Council,
that is-
Now-
Focus on the Family, American Family Association. They're called terrorist groups by our group because what they do is they promote violence towards us by creating a paradigm that makes the whole nation have this overlay of bigotry and hatred towards us,
But do
causing
they-
us to seem as subhuman.
Do they
and if
actively-
we're subhuman, then you can kill us with impunity, which is why our murder rate doubled last year, and it's already past the rate of last year this year.
I'm not refuting any of that. I'm asking, do these groups and individuals actively incite violence against one
No.
another? Okay,
No,
that's
they don't say,
that's
hey,
our difference here.
They don't
but
say,
then
hey,
again,
go kill the transgender people.
Yeah,
But
there are sects of Islam that declare that openly homosexual people are legally to be put to death. So we are talking about two different levels of theology between Islam and Christianity. When you have someone like the Westboro Baptist Church, who's really the worst physical thing they do is stand with signs, God hates fags. We all seen the bullshit they do.
Well, they
but that's
consider
the worst of
themselves
it.
the people who are actually following the word.
Yeah, they
Everyone else
consider
is just-
themselves pure and moral, just like everyone else who stands on the the shoulders of their gods do. But this is where I'm trying to give this distinction between
Yeah.
these two theologies. That was
I got
the
you.
point of putting this out there. So that was the second thing I wanted to say.
Can I just chime in? Like, honestly,
Please,
regardless
Anna.
of religion, like, honestly, I am a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ, and nowhere, like, in the Bible does it says love thy neighbor. Simple as freaking that. Like,
Precisely.
your and then as like just a person who believes in America and the Constitution, your rights end where another person's begin. Plain and simple.
My right to swing my arm.
And in the
swing nose
Bible, it
begins.
does say to respect the laws of the land. And, like, you are not to go out and murder people. That is crazy. Like, regardless of anything, like, that is some severe mental
Yeah,
health
but
issues right there. Like, I feel genuinely bad for that guy because, like, whoever screwed up his mind, and then you got to think about all the other people indoctrinating people like that. And I think that's why education is so important, and
I don't
That's
feel
why they
I don't
took
feel bad
control
for
of
the
it.
killer any longer.
yeah, I mean,
I don't feel bad for him at all.
I feel bad for people who are being indoctrinated like that because
But
it is
education
a
is
growing
that,
movement.
though.
And
That
as
is the
a person who dwells on the dark side of the internet a lot of times, you see a lot of people like, oh, ISIS is cool. Like, even comedians have like jokes promoting it, and it's just like, where does it end? Like, we need to like stop playing into this, being like, I
But
mean, for
these-
girls like
these-
I'm 25. I'm the youngest person on this show. Like, I was born in the 90s, and honestly, I have girls that I know.
I have
I'm not
shoes
gonna
older
name
than
them.
you.
Yeah, I'm a baby. But, like, to stupid people, like, let's just be real here. My generation, they hop on the nearest bandwagon, and there has been cases of young girls going off and promoting ISIS or whatever, and just this extremist point of view. And it's just, it's
Teenagers, that's what
yeah,
they do.
I remember
it's
when I
disgusting,
became
but at
an
the same time, it's
extremist.
like they're reaching out, and I think that we just need to educate people because if people were to know. Just simple education, I think, and
It's going to get worse.
it is.
And coming from like the educational standpoint of it, I know that Kevin and I talked about this briefly before the show, and it's funny because this actually came from a coworker of mine earlier today who is openly gay and has no reason to fear for his life, and he's just a really good guy. Him and I touched briefly. Him and I touched briefly on something called the Stonewall Riots of 1969, and see the end of the 60s and 1969 was kind of a crazy time for a lot of different people because everybody remembers the civil rights movement for African Americans, and everybody remembers the anti-Vietnam protests, and people remember celebrity deaths and things like that. But the Stonewall Riots, I mean, being that they were, I mean, this was the Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village in New York or Manhattan. And it basically, the Stonewall Inn became this bastion for, a lot of people in the LGBT community.
A lot of transgender women.
Absolutely.
They were the first ones in that.
Right. And so, through all of the different police raids that happened throughout the 50s and the 60s, it kind of came to a head almost 47 years ago to the day, because it was the end of June in 1969. So, I mean, we're right there. But, I mean, almost 47 years to the day, there was a raid that the only reason that, these raids had any effect was to basically arrest people who identified as LGBT, and it wasn't even just the patrons, but it was the bar managers and the employees themselves too. So
they just got sick of being pushed around.
Absolutely.
They got sick of being bullied by people in uniforms.
And so they put it together. They created. There were two different activist groups that were created at the time, and they basically fought back. And it was over a 6 or 7 day period, kind of sporadically throughout 6 or 7 days during the end of June in 1969, that they actually came out and said, look, we're not going to take this shit anymore. I mean, literally, we're going to fight for every right that we could possibly get. I mean, we need to be treated with some equality on some level, and we're going to fight to get to the highest levels of equality that we possibly can. And so you look at something like that and you say, look, right now, as far as Vanna with the education, I think teenagers right now, because there are plenty. Look, what are there? 800,000 adults that identify as being openly gay. But that's
no.
That's more than that.
Oh no, the LGBT community comprises about 10 million people, and they just added us asexuals. There's only about 750,000 trans people that are out.
I'm sorry. No, you're exactly right. I had those facts backward. Because
that's why we as trans people want to have the allies of the LGBTs help us.
And
you're finishing your thought, though.
Yeah.
And just to finish that thought, if we have so many people that are identifying in this one respect, I mean, why do they not deserve the respect that they should be given?
This continues to this day. Let me explain to you. This continues to this day. I talk with hundreds and hundreds of transgender men and women all across the United States. We will put in a call for service for law enforcement. They'll come and they'll show up, but if they find out that we're gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender, especially transgender, they give us shoddy service. Right. They have disrespectful service, and if we ask for service again and it's the same people, they don't show up.
Have you ever experienced that personally?
Let me explain to you. As a transgender woman, this is a completely different subject, and we're moving on to something else. As a transgender woman, I have been physically assaulted 2 times by people who said they were Christians. Physically assaulted. Okay. And I've been attacked in public. And then I've been sexually assaulted by a law enforcement official. It was a district attorney from a different county whom I trusted. And so I was in Fresno, and I was doing a Miss Trans event where I was representing my title as Miss Trans, doing a charity. And at midnight, I walked out of the place where I was selling tickets, and a man was parked in front of my car. As I pulled out, he tried to run me off the road. He chased me for 10 blocks, and he tried to block me off. And he tried to get me out of the car.
Get you out of the car.
And I was a CHP trained driver, and so I was able to get my 90 horsepower Subaru and get away, which was very hard. And when I called the local police department, they took my report, and no one followed up. Because I said I'm a transgender woman, and no one followed up. Later, I'm on the Central California Hate Crimes Committee, and when I talked with the FBI about it, they were very interested what had happened to me, very interested, and they were astonished that the local PD hadn't been interested enough to even call me back. So what you're saying about Stonewall is still happening. Transgender people and LGBT people with them get terrible service from law enforcement, and it's pervasive, folks.
No, and with that, I actually, because you mentioned, obviously you're on the Hate Crimes Act Committee. I mean, I
just want to say straight people get horrible service.
Yeah, we are.
It's not. It's just
I think
when I was a deputy sheriff, you would have gotten good service from me.
Here for anybody, and just for anybody listening outside of the Fresno, Clovis, immediate area.
In the world.
If you live here in Fresno, you're going to get some shitty service at some point by the Fresno or Clovis Police Department.
3 main times now. Yeah.
So with that, though, because you mentioned that you're on the Hate Crimes Act Committee, I wanted to get your thoughts, because I know that the Shepard-Byrd Act of, 2009, I mean, that took 11 years. I mean, after Matthew Shepard was, basically beaten to death. I mean, well, I should say beaten within an inch of his life, and then died in the hospital 6 days later.
Same thing.
That was a very, and it goes back to your Westboro Baptist thing, because they got international recognition just for protesting his funeral alone over a kid who there's many different theories, but the ultimate prevailing theory is that he was both of the two attackers. They both came out and mentioned at some point during their interviews and interrogations that they basically beat him because he was quote unquote a faggot, right? Mm-hmm. So now that legislation doesn't get passed. The hate crimes, the Shepard-Byrd Hate Crimes Act doesn't get passed until 2009, until Obama takes office. What for somebody that is transgender, identifies as transgender, works with the Hate Crimes Act committee? What do you think about legislation when it takes that long? I mean, do we care enough?
It's terrible. You have to understand, there's a pervasive paradigm that covers America like a gigantic clear acetate. It's perpetuated by a culture that sees LGBT people as being filthy sinners, deviants, and being people who deny God, and actually people who are tools of Satan. I've been called a tool of Satan. I've had somebody look at me because I'm a transgender woman, and they've looked at me and they've said, "You're causing the wrath of God to come down upon this nation." And I look at them, and I go, "Wow, I must really be a powerful girl, to be able to do that." Right. And so what you have is you have a pervasive paradigm that says if we give any inch to the LGBT community, they're going to take a mile. And so we have to block every single inch so that they don't take a mile. And what's happening is it's backfiring. It's backfiring. And let me teach you two new words, because Laverne Cox and Janet Mock gave us a challenge on Huffington Post Live. And they gave us a challenge to think of words that actually mean something more when we're talking about LGBT people. And we've talked about homophobia, transphobia. That means fear of gay people and lesbians and fear of trans people. Well, they're not afraid of us. They hate our guts. And so I'm introducing a new word for you in both categories: homo-malevolence and trans-malevolence. A person who hates me, like Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick of Texas, is homo-malevolent and trans-malevolent. He's not homophobic. He's not afraid of me. He despises me. He wants to have me have no rights. He wants me to become disappeared in the culture of America. And so this is pervasive, and this is what we're fighting as LGBT people.
But what do you think about his retort to the fact that later on that tweet went up and then it came down and they said it was a pre-scheduled campaign tweet?
I have a question for that. If it came up an hour after the murders were put on the air and then 4 hours later was retweeted, it was purposeful.
No, certainly.
Totally purposeful. Any Twitter user.
Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is a violent, hating bigot. And when I don't mean physically violent, he is an aggressive, violent bigot.
You don't have to use your hands to be violent.
Yeah. You don't.
Yeah, you really don't.
Well, I mean,
and so he hates me, and he doesn't
like
want me to be a part of society, and he's going to do everything he can. He and McCrory of North Carolina and the governor of Mississippi, and they're all going to do everything they can because they see me as contagious. Mm-hmm. They have a false view of how transgender people are. They forget that they don't understand the science that we're born. They just think, oh, that man is posing as a woman. Yeah. We'll talk about that later.
I do want to get into that.
Yeah. People forget how powerful people are, and that's why I get so mad whenever people say, like, oh, they feel powerless or they can't do anything, because honestly, like, if you can promote social justice in any form, why not? Like, that's actually a target. Like, just to have that concept of peace is so controversial these days.
Yeah. But then again, we find peace within ourselves, and that's the thing.
Exactly.
And
any
find
real
peace within
Christian
ourselves, and we
should know that.
Like,
can I just speak on like any lover of Christ? Like,
yeah.
honestly, like, work on yourself. Why don't they protest? No, can I just say something really quick?
Yes, please.
Why are they not protesting divorce? Like, why are there so many priests? Like, honestly, that's
not fair. I want to get into this.
Work on your own
tattooed and pierced. Oh my goodness.
I have tattooed and pierced, and I love Jesus. And honestly, work on your own.
All right,
this slides right into. I think I wrote this up well. Actually, we're just naturally getting there. We're going to take a quick break so everybody can unload, reload, all that stuff. We're going to be talking more and more about the transgender, the LGBT. Man, I cannot spit that one out right.
LGBT community.
About all that. We're going to get all that and some science behind this too. And I know, Kevin, you've got something. There's going to be a good back and forth coming up.
Look forward to it.
We'll be right back. We've got Karen Adele Scott here on The Kick. It's on Longbox.fm.
Thanks for
watching. Back in a minute.
Those ain't real Christians, honey. Those are not real Christians. I'm just telling you that right now. And you know, like, work on your freaking self. Like,
in the 4 segments that we've had in the show already,
counting last show last week, this is by far the best.
Yeah.
What was that?
This,
We have
this
you to
is
thank
by
for
far
that,
the
too.
best segment in the last 2 shows.
Well, this has got more like the actual back and forth, which is what I was wanting.
I just
You wanna
want to
come
say
out?
that on there. Y'all ain't real Christians. Like, we're not your damn self. Like,
You got a room full of smokers here, so.
That's okay. Oh, I'm sticking.
I love your outfit, by the way. You are
I
just
led
really
worship.
beautiful.
I led worship from the piano
Yeah.
for a church of 1,000 for 11 years.
I don't
I
associate
came out,
other
they tried to
Christians.
cast demons out of me, and then they asked me to leave.
Make sure to hit us up on the Facebook. Get your questions in. You can call in. You can talk with him as well and ask your questions, your thoughts, but all the stuff that you wish you knew of what goes on behind the scenes making a film in the industry. That's going on as well. Some games with some fun times, celebrity clam bakes, all that going on the Dirty Dowdy podcast. Wednesday, June 15th on Longbox.fm.
Longbox.fm.
All right, we're back here on The Kick on Longbox.fm, brought to you by Riley's Brewing.
Hey, thank you, Riley.
Now, I keep forgetting to do this, but if you want to participate, you can call in 492-0450 or get on our Skype, Longbox FM, all one word. And, of course, Vanna is live tweeting on our Twitter. The Twitter is Longbox FM, all that stuff. Basically, Longbox FM. Longbox FM will get you anything you need. So, our guest tonight, Karen Adele Scott. Obviously, we got into a whole bunch of... We went from terrorist attacks into getting into a heated talk about now what is the main point of the reason why we brought you on. Transgender, LGBT... I always want to say LGBYN.
LGBT.
I don't know why that is so...
OBGYN. What do you
Is that a u-
LGBT.
Is that a university? Where can I study there?
CNNBCBS.
So,
anyways, one of the things, and you and I had a very nice long discussion 2 weekends ago, I believe,
Right.
or a week and a half ago. Transgender. Why is the science behind it? That's where I was going.
Okay.
And your background, you're not just, and during the break we were learning so much. We only barely touched on it. Ex-sheriff's deputy,
Cadet Corps Major.
I mean, you've got quite the background, but you can actually bring something to the table here, because I know people will look at transgender as, well, we're seeing all the hate, we're seeing all the confusion, and I think at some point it'd be good if people knew the reasoning behind it. And I know right off the bat there's going to be nurture and what went wrong.
Oh,
and you have something different.
It doesn't have anything to do with nurture. It does have everything to do with nature. And let me just give you a little bit of a background on myself. I remember being 2 years old, almost 3 years old, and my mother looked at me and said, "Hey, little boy, come into the front room." And I looked at her and I said, "No, Mommy, I dirl, Mommy, I dirl." And that was I couldn't say girl yet. I was so little. I said, "Mommy, I dirl." She goes, "You're not a girl." And I said, "Mommy, I dirl." And I told her I was a girl. I used to lay in bed as a little tiny child, and I would tuck my male plumbing between my legs as I went to bed. And I would push my ribs out and hope God would change me to what I knew I should look like by morning. This is called early onset transgenderism. And early onset transgender children are now finally being safe to come out. And you saw Jazz Jennings has a TV show, and there's other children. It's just, here's the deal. In little boy bodies, 99.985% of little boy bodies in the second trimester have their brains washed by testosterone. The washing of testosterone and androgens inside the brain causes a rebuilding of the whole hypothalamus and the center core structure of the brain. It rewrites the hardware, and it actually creates the hypothalamus to be 3 times larger with many more cells. And for some reason, that makes a male gender child. But in that really, really rare 1/6 of 1% of little boy bodies, for some reason, and we think that it has to do with what's called introns in genes, and I'll tell you more about that in a second. We think that causes the washing of testosterone to not occur. And so everything starts female. Your private parts start female in little boy bodies and little girl bodies. Your brains all start female. In little transgender girls, the brain stays female. We know who we are our whole lives. I knew I was a little girl. I thought that my stuff was going to fall off, that when my boobs grew, and that I was going to become a woman, I was going to have kids, and I was going to be a wife. I had no idea that I was a little boy. Now, I hadn't been molested. I hadn't been abused. I had loving Christian parents that took me to church. I had only one sibling, which was a boy, so I didn't understand that girls looked any different, except I saw mommy was different. And so, that's what happened. Now, this happens in little girl bodies, too. For some reason, in little girl bodies, even though the plumbing's little girl plumbing, the little girl brains get washed by androgens. They didn't expect it. They didn't know it was coming. It just happens. And it rewrites the hard drive in the little girl body, and it makes a male gender brain. Now, they've done studies with MRIs in Spain in 2008.
Science.
And in 2008, they did MRIs, and they did 400 non-trans women, 400 trans women, 400 men, and they found out that the transgender women's brains looked nearly identical to the non-transgender women's brains, but totally different than the male brains, whether they be gay or straight. And they did EEG studies, and they found out that if a transgender woman thinks thoughts, you can have a computerized EEG that literally throws a color pattern onto a screen and shows you this beautiful map of what they're thinking. Non-transgender women and transgender women's brains think identically, but totally different than gay or straight men. And so transgender people have different gender brains than their bodies, and that's their birth difference that they must cope with their whole lives.
So you're saying that there's basically a chemical reality to
there's a physiological reality. Yes,
sure.
With chemistry,
science, man.
So you're saying a man's brain,
science.
like with the neurons, everything, the chemistry is completely different.
I'm
from
saying
a brain,
that there's a
from
core
female.
structural difference.
You said
Core
something
structural.
that
Okay. I didn't know that.
that I love, that really made all this kind of come together for me in one simple phrase, and it's the bad phrase of it's a birth defect.
It's a birth difference.
Birth difference is
I don't call it a defect because you know what? We are who we are.
No different
like a
than
kid with spina bifida. They're not defective. They're just
Down
have that
syndrome,
challenge.
autism. It's the same in the sense that
we're a rare
something's
difference.
different from the very beginning. That takes time.
And it's like intersex babies. Everybody goes like, yeah, babies are all going to be male and they're all going to be female. It's just a gender binary. But that's not true. 1 out of every 1,200 babies are going to have bits and pieces of both genders. Now, you could have an XX female that has a larger male part and a smaller female part, and you could have an XY male that has a larger female part and a smaller male part. And then there's the people who have completely formed both. Then you have De La Chapelle kids. De La Chapelle kids is a syndrome where they are XX females and their entire male anatomy that functions is male.
So
and they're XX females. They're sterile. They can't produce sperm, but they look and they act, and they don't even know they're not. They don't know they're not XY males. They think they're XY males their whole life. They just go, I don't know why I can't have children. And then you have what is called Psywer syndrome, or we call them androgen insensitivity syndrome kids, and they're little XY males, but they have all female plumbing. They not only have the girl parts on the outside, they have the girl parts on the inside, but instead of ovaries, they have ovarian streaks that still produce estrogen but can't make eggs. And so they don't know that they're XY male chromosome people until they don't have their period. And then they're like, why doesn't Sally have her period? And then you have these people that are in an island of the Caribbean, and they're born little female bodies, and they look like little female bodies until they're 12 years old. And then all of a sudden, ta-da! Male plumbing appears.
Jesus.
I'm still waiting for mine.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so
That's
it's
gotta
like
be a shock.
And so what you have is there is no male female only sex. There's actually male, intersex, and female. And then there's all sorts of stuff that can happen. Your chromosomes don't make you male and female, and your outside plumbing doesn't make you male and female. I use this analogy. If you were a military officer and you're in Afghanistan and you have an IED go off and your private parts are blown off, do you stop being a guy?
Yup, that's such a good example.
Your brain
Oh my
makes your
gosh.
gender, not your plumbing.
It's
Can
just
I
your
just
pride
high-five
that
you
stops
for
you.
that?
I think
That
there's,
was like
I
the
think
best
there's, I
No.
think there's
I need
something
a high
inherent
five.
to say
That
about
was amazing.
like if you're a guy, and in that analogy, there's the emotional and the psychological side effects of that. So
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, physically you don't stop being a guy, but
Yeah.
I mean, knowing some veterans who have come back from war and who have been wounded, and not in always the most kindest of ways.
Terrible.
Yeah.
You know,
Um,
it kind of. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was only going to finish the thought by saying this. I don't think that in that analogy, while it is appropriate, because I mean it speaks to a very physical sense of whether you're a guy or a female, whatever the case may be. I think that there's a lot that goes into it, and I'm sure you can agree too. I mean, there's more to it beyond the physical. It's more also psychological, mental, emotional,
especially
spiritual.
For males.
Yeah.
Especially for males. Now there are some females, and they get cancer, and they have to have a vaginectomy, and they have to have their private parts taken out and closed. They don't stop being female.
Yeah.
And so, transgender women are real women. They're not men posing as women, and transgender men are real men. They're not men. They're not women posing as men. We are the gender that we show because we finally aligned our brains that we're the opposite gender of our body with our body, which gives us peace. I like to think of it this way. Why would you hate me because I wanted to be happy?
Exactly.
And who am I hurting because I want to be happy? That's like having somebody with a dozen donuts and they're on a diet, so you can't eat the donut.
Exactly.
Well, I think it goes.
You're full of beautiful examples, and I love you. I just want to say
we were talking in comparison to being like a Down syndrome or something. You can't hate the Down syndrome kid because that's how he was born. You're born a certain way. That's how you're born, but that's not the connection. And I'm sure you're enlightened. I'm pretty sure I'm seeing some eyes around the table here that you're bringing something to them alone here. And I think I have a lot of smart people around here. So this is knowledge that needs to be put out there. Now, the acceptance part of it, though, I don't think
it's
is
extremely difficult. Like Clovis Unified, we were going to talk about Clovis.
Yes, I hate Clovis Unified.
I was going to just say, as I never really dug into the physiological explanation for these things, but it fills in a lot of the gaps that we socially.
Man.
And it's funny, we all think that something like gender is so simple as like black and white, you're a boy or a girl.
It is so
but it is just it's a fucking mess, and that's just nature because nature is messy, and there's all kinds of variation.
I like to think of it in a religious sense. There was Adam and Eve in the garden, and they were perfect, and then there was the fall, and sin and death entered into the world, along with mutations and chromosomal aberrations and child defects and birth defects
and adaptation
and developmental defects.
Chemical influences.
It's a limitation of our imagination, I guess, to just think there can only be one of two things, because I guess that's what we see, that's what we experience every day.
We're all frogs.
We don't, and it gives explanation for like why there's effeminate guys. I know a guy, we have a term for the metrosexuals and stuff, like the guys who are just, maybe it's physiological, maybe it's social, maybe it's this or that.
And it's the same formation. You think about it this way, and they're going to find this out when they do research, but they're going to find out, look, if you're a little boy body and your brain doesn't get washed by testosterone at all, it's female. But what if it gets a little bit washed?
We all start as girls.
Seriously, everybody has an X chromosome.
A little bit washed by testosterone. Are you now an effeminate gay man? And what if it gets a little more washed? Are you gender fluid in the middle? And what if a female...
Is there going to be a spectrum that's created, and then it's going to be like
it's already there?
I think that's the point that Kara's trying to make is that there is a spectrum in place.
I just fear that it would be
really gauging girls,
but you're gauging.
But they're still girls.
Hold on. Let me just say real quick. By the way, if you're listening, you wanna punch in 4920450 or again the Skype. If please, I would love to hear from the outside world. Kevin.
Okay.
Wait.
So I would.
Kevin's got his pages of things for me.
Yeah, he's ready for this.
Wouldn't
be doing my job.
Really
okay, go ahead.
We're still on the topic. I just fear it doesn't turn into a thing where it becomes systematized, and now we have, like you don't have an ID that says male or female. It's like every single where you're at on the spectrum. Like it becomes a labeling game. Like. It's where people
I'm glad you mentioned that.
That's my fear. I don't mind like
that's not my purview.
Okay. Kevin.
I know. I'm just saying.
So I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't make myself at least a little bit hated.
Are you the resident contrarian?
I must be.
Okay.
I must be. This is from the American Colleges for Pediatricians. That's where it's at. And this is basically talking about gender ideology and its harmful effects towards children.
Okay.
Now, these aren't necessarily my beliefs.
Who's the author?
What are your sources,
is
sir?
It Paul McHugh?
Are they first or are they
Bibliography,
secondary?
sir.
Paul McHugh is one of them.
It's Paul McHugh, who hasn't had a transgender patient in 35 years.
Okay. All right.
And follows the reparative therapy model.
I haven't even put my argument out. Now listen.
Who's even cast out by the American Psychological Association and the American Medical Association. Oh, let's listen to him.
All interesting facts here.
All right.
Google it.
So,
Google it.
I don't know how this is going to go.
There are more. There's Michelle Cretelia. She's the president of the American College of Pediatricians.
She was.
Quentin
She's
Van
not
Meter,
anymore.
Vice President of the American College of Pediatricians,
Not anymore.
pediatric endocrinologist, and of
Maybe
course
20 years ago.
Paul McHugh,
Yes.
which you seem to be familiar with.
Paul McHugh is a radical Catholic fundamentalist who decided a long time ago that anyone who's LGBT is mentally ill.
That's excellent. Let's stay away from the let's just go with the facts here.
Let's stay away from the facts, but go with the facts.
Well,
But
the
what are
fact
your
that he is
sources,
a certain
sir?
character doesn't negate what the article states.
no, it
negates
represents
everything.
it represents his opinion, is what you're saying.
No,
Yeah,
but
it's not
the
based in
article is
science.
not.
No, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
It
Bushy wants
represents
that
his
away, Mom.
opinion, is what I'm saying.
It's filtered by his religious views.
I think
as opposed
I
to
think
real
ad
science.
hominem is when you attack the man and not the argument. Is that the word?
No,
Ad hominem.
Okay, he's getting
I told
defensive
you.
now.
I told
All
you.
right, all
I
right,
told
let's
you he
let
hasn't had a
you
transgender
speak.
patient in
Let's
35
let you
years.
hear
so-
these,
Yeah, give
All
him-
right,
give him his
Kevin's
chance.
got the floor.
All right, so there's 8 facts here, and there's a few that I think pertain to some things that we spoke about. Number 1, human sexuality is an objective biological binary trait. X, Y, and XX are genetic markers of health, not genetic markers of a disorder. The norm for human design is to be conceived either male or female. Human sexuality is binary by design, with the obvious purpose.
I've already
of
told you
being-
that's not true, though.
I mean, but I understand. I'm just this is the other side.
He
This isn't
types, he
necessarily my
must
side.
read.
This is just the other side. Human sexuality is the binary by design, with the obvious purpose of being the reproductive and flourishing of our species. This principle is self-evident. The exceedingly rare disorders of sex development include, but are not limited to testicular feminization and congenital adrenal hyperplasia. All are medically identifiable deviations from the sexually binary norm and the rightly recognized as disorders of human design. Individuals with DSD do not constitute a third sex. Now, again, this is not. These aren't my stances. This is just the stance, against the idea that
They
there's a
deemed
gender
what's
fluidity.
normal.
Yeah,
Right. What
He-
you're reading
he
is
did-
called obsolete science.
I'll
Obsolete
have
science
to-
that's been. It's like the same thing where, there were people that said, well, giraffes' necks are long because they've stretched, and each generation of giraffes stretches, and thus they had long necks. And we found that not to be true. That's not true. But people could still say the earth is flat because if you walk to the corner bar to go have a beer, it looks flat.
All right.
And the people you're quoting, it's obsolete.
Yeah.
It's even been disclaimed by the American Psychological Association and the American Medical Association. In fact, the College of Pediatrics that you're referring to has negated all of those claims.
Well, here's the thing,
It's
Kevin.
just like
In
marijuana.
their-
Honestly, research needs to be done, and it has been done, and so many people's opinions are outdated, and that's why education, in my opinion, is so important, because things freaking change, man. Like, science,
it's-
regardless of your beliefs, science should be like one of those things that it's like, this is not a fallacy. This is
even
just
science
common freaking
fucks
sense,
things up
man.
a lot.
Look
But
at it in
Dude,
terms.
like,
Look at it.
I mean,
listen.
like,
Look at
as
it in
a
terms of the
Christian,
world.
Like, you have to look at science and just be like, okay, that
science
makes
has
freaking
become
sense.
a brand new religion. And
No, dude,
you
like, there's a
and they
scientific
have
method.
No,
their-
you're
Shit
talking
has
now.
been
You're talking about
researched, but it is
Scientology,
valid.
and that's null and
The
void.
points
Listen,
she's
I'm not talking
making
about
have been
Scientology
so
at all.
valid. No, it's Scientology, dude. Just
No,
science.
he said
not
I was talking about
yeah.
Scientology,
not religion.
no.
Just pure basic freaking science, man.
I'm
But look at the world at large, right?
I'll say this,
can we not
Kevin,
agree?
the
Can we
problem
not
with
agree
that-
really quickly? Can we not agree that, like you said, education updates itself?
And I just want to say, I go to church every
Science
Sunday.
updates
Like
itself.
science,
Everything
does.
updates
hold on.
itself.
The
Your
Bible
computer-
talks a lot about
One
science.
at a
yo.
time, guys.
Yeah, I'm going to
If
give this back
anyone's-
to Vic. Vic.
Hold on for one moment. If anybody owns a computer, laptop, anything, period, right?
Google it.
Your computer just recently may have updated to Windows 10, right? Those updates come whether you want them or not, whether they are welcome or not, but those updates happen, right? So facts change.
All right, so back to
Opinions
Vic.
change.
No one else say
Yes.
anything. Vic, please go.
so okay. So my problem is that we suffer from a deconstructivist worldview, in that you're talking about oh shit.
You're getting set up right now.
Yeah, no. I
Okay,
had,
here.
you know what? It's
I'm going
fucking
to
killing
say
me.
this because, all right, Karen.
When you get
Obviously,
Yeah,
Doctor
no, it fucking lost me right
Dr.
there. I had it.
McHugh does. You're not a fan. Okay.
Oh no, this is what I was gonna say. Your argument you read it used the word normal, and we live in a world of science
What is normal, honey?
where we think that we can scientifically define normal, and really normal defines our worldview and our beliefs and all our superstitions, And so when they use arguments saying XY is the normal way to reproduce, male and female, they're kind of not giving enough credit to nature in all her variation. And in science, and this is why I'll shit on science too, is we believe we can understand something by deconstructing it and turning it into things that we can label when it's infinitely complex.
Okay.
Sexuality is infinitely complex.
So,
to say that there is normal and that they just violate that normal is where that argument goes wrong.
So I just Googled the word normal, and it says conforming to a standard, usual, typical, or expected.
And I Googled McHugh. And it says McHugh specifically states that there's no evidence to claim that people like Bruce Jenner have a biological source for their transgender assumptions. And to make this claim, it says, and this is in thinkprogress.org, to make this claim, McHugh must ignore at least 15 studies that have found exactly that kind of evidence showing the biological origin for transgender people.
Okay, so here's the second thing that I want to mention.
I just mean we can't define normal. It's really just what's normal. What was normal
let Kevin go.
hundreds of years ago?
I want to go to the suicide rate of transgender people.
Good.
Because the statistic that I found, let me know if I'm wrong, is about 40%.
Yeah, about 43%.
Yeah, about
That
43%.
is too high.
Now, of course it's too high. Can we at least agree that someone who attempts suicide, regardless of the percentage of a group that they're in, is in some kind of unhealthy mental state?
No.
Yeah.
And
So
you and I talked to Kevin.
Society has a lot to do with
Yes.
it.
But hold on. They can have been walking a pathway where they're hated and hated and hated and
Oh, yeah,
hated
that's the
and
cause
hated,
of it.
and then they become down. So yes, okay, I will agree with you. They can
You
be
are
in
a
an
product of
unhealthy.
your
That's every
They
environment.
can be in an unhealthy mental state, but the causation of that is what we really need to talk about.
Perfect.
It's the same thing as us talking about the causation of. Mr. Asshat who shot the people in Orlando. What was the real causation
I
of
think
that?
what
This is the
Kevin's
same
saying
thing.
is like most people who kill themselves had that from someone somewhere in some fashion to get them to the point
Yes,
of
that's
killing
what,
them.
that's what I'm saying.
But
Now, hang
even
on.
that. But even
Second
still-
point. Stop.
Depression is one of those.
My second point here. Let me find this fact. Okay. According to the Williams Institute at UCLA and the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, prevalence of suicide attempts is elevated among those who disclose to everyone that they are transgendered or gender nonconforming.
Transgendered is an improper term, by the way. It's transgender.
I'm sorry, transgender.
Transgendered refers that something happened to us, and that didn't happen to
It
us.
kept my autocorrect kept coming up incorrect on
Yeah.
transgender, and it corrected on transgendered. So
Yeah, that's wrong.
I stuck with that. So
Conspiracy.
Damn
my apology. I will
autocorrect.
no longer. I'll no longer call them
Autocorrect. So have you ever? Anyway.
Okay.
Autocorrect.
Of transgender people who say occasionally identified as transgendered. Of transgender people who say other people occasionally identified them, meaning a man is walking around as a woman and someone says, "Hey, you're not a woman, you're a man." 41% have attempted suicide. So these are people that have actually been identified by other people in society, whether it's been positive, negative, or whatever, which is getting to the point about them being ostracized. Among those who say that they have never been identified as transgendered, 36% are at the suicide rate. So people who go about their life transgender, but no one has any clue whatsoever, you still get a 1 out of 3 rate of suicide.
Okay,
But it goes back to what you and I were talking about prior to the show. Just really quickly, just to interject something.
Guys, I gotta. I'm sorry. We have a phone caller.
Do we have a
Oh,
call?
cool.
Yeah.
Do we have a goddamn
Tim is on the line. Tim.
Tim.
Team.
What up?
Hey, Ben. I'm calling thanks to Ben who turned me on to this show, and I'm now going to be a regular
This is
listener.
Tim Hernandez,
But thank-
who I talked to. This is one of my coworkers right now. Tim, how are you doing,
Awesome,
buddy?
Tim. Thank you.
Tim.
Hey there.
I'm doing great, and I'm enjoying every minute of the show. I just want to say, first of all, thank you for having Karen on today. She's an incredible inspiration to
She
the
is.
community.
She is.
and-
Thank you very much.
Follow her.
You're very
and
kind.
incredible. I wish her Godspeed to get everything done that we're trying to get done. I was just calling in because I think that we're missing a piece of this whole transgender community is that my second boyfriend, I'm gay, my second boyfriend is transgender and is a beautiful woman today. we forget the human piece of this, because there is so much more in this. The physiology and the chemicals and everything within ourselves is an important part, and I'm glad to see that somebody that can debate it and show them on their level of those people that don't understand it. But I was a gay man, and I fell in love with a woman, and by the end of the process, I mean, we're no longer together, but the fact was we missed that human piece. And I think that there's a soul there, and what they are really inside with their mind is not matching with their body. And just because of that, I grew up Pentecostal, so I was taught that it was wrong by God, that it was a mistake. But you know what? God didn't make a mistake in creating my ex, because she was a wonderful person. She cocooned and then became a beautiful butterfly. And that's what we need to remember, that our transgender women, our transgender men are incredible and beautiful. And once we let them be who they are, then we as a people can appreciate the love that they have for us.
Absolutely. And Tim, you know what? Thank you so much for calling in and for saying that, because I think that's ultimately the point of it. Because Tim, I think you'll agree that besides the education of it, I mean, there are a lot of statistics, there are a lot of numbers, there are a lot of facts that you could throw out. But I think the biggest part of it is really remembering the humanity that comes out of being an identifier with the LGBT community, if I'm not wrong.
Without a doubt. And I appreciate you guys doing this. And like I said, you now have a lifelong follower. I'm going to get a podcast so I can get on and hear you all. I'm listening to you through YouTube right now.
Awesome.
Be sure to
Check it out.
subscribe. Longbox FM, you guys.
Yeah, hey, Tim, check it out. I'll give you all the details tomorrow when I see you, man. But, dude, thank you so much for calling in.
Karen, I love you. Karen, I love you. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks a lot.
Excellent, Tim. Thanks so much for calling in, man. We'll talk to you later. See you.
Thanks, man.
Thanks. Bye.
God, I love having callers.
Yeah, call in.
Right, I want to go back to Kevin. What you were saying, the suicide rate. There was actually somebody on YouTube here in the chat who actually brought up something interesting too. When we were talking about the reasons why the suicide, all that, brought up, and this has been a thing recently with videos. 22 veterans commit suicide every day.
Yeah, I was going to.
It's a lack of support and an abundance of hate and guilt caused by society. From Rob Weeks.
No. The suicide is from them being sent overseas and
murdering
being forced
people.
to murder other people.
Careful, because that's not entirely as a former Marine and a veteran. I will tell you that's not always the case. I will tell you that's not always the case, and I will just say this:
we could disagree, but
that's what the show is.
What branch? What branch?
Oh,
I mean,
disagreement. Good.
No, I would be
studies,
willing to bet
studies,
dollars.
Studies upon studies have shown that it doesn't matter. You could be sent overseas, you could be here. A majority, I will give you a majority because that is the facts. I will give you a majority of veteran suicides are caused by deployments. But that's not 100% of the case. You can't generalize the 22 veterans every day.
You just told me you give me a majority.
No. It's a majority.
Studies have been shown.
If 5 out of 6 people in this room, classify as Republican, I agree with you in part. If 5 out of 6 people in this room classify as Republican, but 1 classifies as Democrat, does that make all of us Republicans?
Irrelevant. What I'm
saying? No, it's absolutely true.
Irrelevant.
It's absolutely true.
Yes,
it is. It's relevant to the point because what you're saying
humans
is
were not meant to go slaughter other humans.
A majority is
in the name of
a majority is 51% if you're looking at it. A majority is 51%, but there's still 49%. 100 people polled. If 51% vote a certain way, that's considered a majority.
Is it fair to say that's the general consensus then?
No,
I feel we're getting off.
A majority is not general. All right,
let's bring it back. By the way, Kevin, the internet, the military and the internet hates you right now.
Oh, I'm sure.
Reading it right now.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I know.
You're being that guy. Good
That's
job.
fine. I'll be that.
All right, now finish up your point here.
Because I want to answer.
Because it's taken 40 minutes.
Karen,
yeah, I'm going to kill myself.
Are you familiar with the Swedish study?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Should I let you say anything before I get into this
go ahead.
one? Okay.
Go for it.
This is from journalplos.org, which is this is the long-term follow-up of transsexual persons undergoing sex reassignment surgery cohort study in Sweden. Swedish study conducted over 30 years and consisted of 324 sex reassigned persons found that Persons with transsexualism after sex reassignment have considerably higher risks of mortality, suicidal behavior, and psychiatric.
There you go. Words.
Can I explain it to you why?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I got 3 more sentences. Mobility than the general population.
I know what your next sentences are going to be, but go for it.
Our findings suggest that sex reassignment, although alleviating gender dysphoria, may not suffice as treatment for transsexualism and should inspire improved psychiatric. I'm working on that word. It's a CH.
Words, man.
Psyche,
Come on.
man.
Thank you.
You got it.
And somatic care after sex reassignment for this patient group. Okay.
Let me explain to you why that happened. In Sweden and in Europe at that point, they were doing 2-step transgender surgery to do gender confirmation surgery. The 2-step surgery is like 22 years obsolete even now. It was much more obsolete back then. And what was happening is they were basically depleting these people of any parts that could feel good. And so they were basically cutting off and reattaching. And then, secondarily, they weren't going through any type of protocols to see, is this a person that's maybe bipolar? Is this a person that's depressed? Is this a person that has some sort of a problem mentally? They weren't doing that either. Like, oh yeah, well this person wants to be surgically altered and we're going to alter it. And they were making these people, and I don't want to say horrible things, but the way that they looked was terrifying. And they were having a life where they couldn't feel any pleasure, and they looked terrible, horrible. And since we've had gender confirmation surgery that's one stage, like Marcy Bowers does and Thomas Satterwhite does and Suporin in Thailand, we have you can't tell. If you looked at a transgender woman that has had gender confirmation surgery, she looks like any other natal woman, and you'd never know. And she's completely orgasmic. She's sensitive, and everything's been folded to keep the nerves. And the new statistics that are completely different from the Swedish study show that transgender women who have had gender confirmation surgery, should they choose to have it, and they don't always have to have it to be a transgender woman, should they choose to have it, they're exceedingly higher in their joy. And we call it pure joy. They're much happier than they were before. In fact, the rate of people having regret is extremely low because you have to go through a year of living as the opposite gender before you're allowed to do it. And then you have to have a letter from a certified medical doctor and a second letter from a certified psychiatrist or a certified psychologist, and then you have to take those letters to the doctor, and they have to approve you, and they even counsel you. So
Devil's
this is not
advocate.
on a whim. This
Devil's
is not
advocate,
done on
one
a
more
whim.
time.
One moment, really quick. Karen, I got to say I love you. I do. I love, because Kevin, you got to at least appreciate this. You understand when you're arguing with someone about who's a socialist, and they give you that argument that you just know how to destroy. You know what I mean? You just feel so great. You're like,
you're building me up like I'm attacking over
Kevin's
here.
a socialist in this?
She just destroyed that argument, and you did it with a fashion of such a depth of knowledge that I know, and I appreciate that depth, and that's.
Let me say, I think I know where Kevin's coming from. I think Kevin came into this with an idea on this whole
I know
subject.
He's just being devil's advocate.
No. I think he came in with something, and obviously we discussed the science aspect of it, which really just it kind of messes things up, messes with the flow. Question though,
okay,
but gay versus transgender, much different scenario. Because gay, now you have nature versus nurture, although you're born that way.
Yeah, it's
been
my experience being involved in the LGBT community with lesbians, gays, and bisexuals. It's been my distinct experience that no gay man and no lesbian goes, gee, I think I'm going to just hate God today and have my whole family shun me and hate me, and I'm going to be gay today. I think that I'll just choose to. Oh, and I'm going to like that guy. I'm going to like that guy over there, even though society is going to hate me, mock me. I might lose my job, and friends are going to shun me. Gee, I think I'm just going to do. No, wait, hold on.
Okay.
Let me finish.
I do want to
Gays
say next.
and lesbians and bisexual people are who they say they are, just like transgender people are who they say they are. They don't choose. It's not a choice.
I'll say this.
Hold on. Is there an aspect with the gay and lesbian community, though, nature versus nurture is a real thing?
No. Not any more than being transgender. It's not my experience, and I'm scientific. I observe and I look at everything scientifically. My experience is that these little boys that are cis-normal boys, cisgender means that you're born natally a boy, they just like guys. They don't know why they do. They just do.
But
They're
is there
not
any
attracted to
possibility
girls.
that there is something now? Not in everyone. That there is something, an event, a thing.
Well, okay, but little girls get raped far more often than little boys do, and they don't become lesbians because of it.
I'll say this really quick. I got to interject because there's the one thing. Okay, I understand that there's this overwhelmingly biological aspect to your sexuality, but I would not go so far as to dismiss the social aspect. And I believe, if you want to study or look into what's known as epigenetics, and it clearly states that we're rewriting our genetic information through every day and all our iterations through society.
I can explain genetics. I teach genetics.
And so in society, in a way, we can physically change ourselves by our environment. And how can you really dismiss environment entirely?
You can change things. For instance, if you're depressed, certain parts of your brain can get smaller.
Yep.
Yeah.
Depression can lead to losing receptor sites, gaining receptor sites. That's all true.
Okay.
But I mean, even socially and culturally, a society will have an impact on... I mean, I grew up with a friend who was gay. And I don't
think society can be said to make people gay. I think they choose to love the person they're attracted to.
But along those same lines, though,
I'm just saying,
what goes back to Kevin's point.
It.
Kevin wants us.
Awesome. Come on. 2 things, because it's 9 o'clock and I have to bounce. I want to go back to the Sweden study, because you said the technique they used was outdated by 20 years, and it did not... Even then. The result of it was they were not able to deprive...
It was a bad study.
Yeah.
It's been thoroughly disproven.
Well, you said the surgery itself...
Was horrible.
Because they did not allow them to enjoy the sexual
They had no more enjoyment.
They had no more enjoyment. Is that the sole purpose for the high rate of suicide
That's
and the
part
mortality
of it.
rate
Lack
afterwards?
of counseling, too. I counsel transgender men and women all the time. We contact on Facebook. I counsel people. I was counseling a woman today, and she's acting like a he. She sounds like he, and I can go into that. But what you have is there are people who act like they're transgender and they're not. There are people who are on the autism spectrum, and they might they used to call it Asperger's syndrome. They're autistic, and they have an impulse. And the impulse is, I've seen one kid that loves canteens, and he has like dozens of canteens. Others like hot rod cars. And there are some who their impulse is to be female. Some go so far as their impulse is to be an anime character that's female. And so there are people that I've counseled, and I will look at them and I'll say, you need to talk to a psychologist. And you need to go see a psychologist, because I don't think you're transgender. But what I say doesn't matter. It's what you and a trained psychologist discover. And so a lot of these people that were in this study, and it was a small study. Go read back how small that study was. It was tiny, a tiny study of only a few people. And with badly formed genitalia, no feeling. Yeah, we're not talking hundreds in this study, okay?
No, we're talking 324.
Yeah. It's not that big. That's tiny.
Hundreds.
That's for Europe.
That's still hundreds.
Okay.
Yeah, but an amount of people.
But my point doesn't have to do with 320. My point
number.
has to do with the quality of life. They were having a bad quality of life, and they weren't triaged properly by mental health people. That was their problem. And at that site, that study, and McHugh are the two biggies that people use as their double-barrel shotgun to try to shoot transgender people down, and they're both thoroughly debunked by new studies.
But we're still in 2011, I believe, was where I pulled the last stat. I don't know if it was Hugh or not.
Would you like me to read you recent studies? I can. I have them at my fingertips.
My question goes back to the suicide rate, which you agreed was at like 41%.
Yeah, may I explain why we have a high suicide rate? It's really simple. And
explain it.
It's really simple. If I come out, 9 out of 10 families shun me. 9 out of 10 families go, you're filthy now, and we don't want to be with you. And they shun you, and you become alone. If you were married, it doesn't matter if you were married for decades, you're dumped. Yeah. How do you feel? And your kids that you loved, that you cherished love on all of your life, your children, all of a sudden won't talk to you, and they say you're dead to me. And so you become alone, you lose your children, you lose your spouse. Even if you still loved him or her, you lose your spouse. And then we have a double the unemployment rate. We might, in some states, if you get fired for being transgender, there is no recourse. You're fired. Hi, I have to come out. I have gender dysphoria, and I'm dying. If I don't come out, if I don't transition, I'm going to kill myself. I got to transition. Oh, by the way, now you lose your job. Oh, you lose your family. Oh, now you can't afford your house. You can't afford your car. Oh, I'm sorry. You don't have enough money to pay your rent. Oh, I'm sorry. You're my child, and I've now cast you into the street because you're filthy dirty and you don't listen to me and you're choosing a stupid lifestyle. 17% of homeless youth are transgender, and they have to do what's called survival sex just to get food. And they become sex workers just to get food. Now, you don't think that that's cause for suicide? You don't think losing your family is cause for suicide? That losing your home, your livelihood is cause for suicide? We're the first fired, the last hired. It's terrible, and it's pervasive across the whole United States. I can walk down the street, and I can have people visually avoid me where I live. I can have them call me it, thing, tranny, she-male where I live. And this happens across the United States. It's the same thing as 100 years ago. If a black man walked down the street and people called him the N-word, and they didn't want him in the bathrooms because he's going to attack their wives and he's going to attack their daughters, and they don't want him around their daughters because, you know, things might happen, and it's the same. It's history repeating.
It's the same
thing. So, Karen,
thing.
can we agree? Can we agree then that? Because it sounds like at some point there are, and I know Kevin and I had talked about this, but it sounds like there are environmental factors that go into the suicide.
Culture.
Well, but
and
I mean, we are a culture that wants to be the biggest and the best at what we do, and we want to excel at all the normal things that normal people do. Correct?
Let me explain to you the suicide attempt rate. Even in African Americans that are transgender, it's higher. Because there's a nexus in transgender women
and
transgender women that are African American. It's higher. There's a nexus of hatred. We hate you because we're misogynists. You're a woman. We hate you because you're transgender, because we're transmalevolent, and we're bigot racists, and we hate you because you're black. Which is why the majority of murdered transgender people are African American women.
Yeah,
they have a nexus of evil.
That's really how you can identify
rate, guys,
where we need social improvement. You just look at who's killing each other the most.
All right.
We got one more call.
I do need to bounce, and I don't want to bounce. I really would like to stay. I just have to wake up at 5 a.m. Karen, please come back.
Okay.
Please.
Yes, we
this is
phenomenal.
This is exactly what I wanted to happen right here. This is awesome, and I don't mean again. I know what I.
We didn't.
He's not bailing.
The facts and stuff I'm covering.
Kevin,
this is not my viewpoint.
Terrorism.
This is just me having to play what it takes to get discussion going.
All right. So we have a caller. Are you there?
There's a caller.
Hi, caller.
Caller should talk now.
Caller, you're on the air.
And
I barely hear shit. What's going on?
What's happening, caller? How you doing?
Hello.
Hi, we're here.
Hello, Kevin. Can you hear me?
Hello, crew.
What's happening? This is Kevin Wells. This is actually just a real quick plug. This is my co-host for the carnival that is going down on the 28th of this month. Kevin, what's up, man?
Not much, man. Just at the local sushi joint. Roll one for me.
You go. Shout out.
Showing some love out there, some support.
Love them.
There you go. Right on, man.
Best Japanese sushi ever.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so Kevin, just so you know, and I'm sure you're already up to date, I kind of filled you in a little bit here and there, man, but we have Karen Adele Scott in the studio tonight. We're talking all things transgender and LGBT, man. Do you have a question?
That's what's up.
Do you have a question for Karen?
What was that?
Do you have a question for Karen tonight?
I did not. Honestly, I cannot hear you, Ben. I wish I could hear you guys.
Well, if you're replying to me, then you're lying.
Yeah, we're sorry, Kevin. We're gonna have to bounce on that. We don't have the most professional phone setup here. Thanks, Comcast.
We can hear him pretty well.
Absolutely is. Yeah, no, he came through loud and clear. But sorry about that,
Yeah,
Kevin. If you're listening, man, fucking don't hate us.
Yeah, just turn your radio down in the background.
Yeah, and all the other background noise.
So
whatever.
yeah, no, we lost Kevin, but we're gonna have to wrap everything up now. Karen, give us a little bit more, something that you want to push for the end of the show here.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen out there in Radio Land and on the internet, you need to understand that transgender people are born. We're a rare and special birth difference. And we just want kindness, dignity, and respect that any other human being gets. We're choosing joy. We're choosing to be our authentic selves. We choose to be us because if we don't, we die. We literally, if you can think about a transgender man or woman, think about being rolled under a wave in the ocean, a really, really, really big wave. You're rolled and you're down 20, 30, 40 feet below the wave, and you're trying to swim to the surface, and your lungs are burning because you can't get any air, and you're dying. And the only way to survive is to get to the surface and take a breath of air. When we are untransitioned, we're transgender and we get gender dysphoria, which is a medical condition recognized, we have to swim to the surface, and that's transitioning. And when we take that breath of air, we end up having pure joy to finally be our real selves. And so when you see a transgender person, please understand what they've gone through. They're generally hated by their families. They've been dumped by almost everyone. They're usually having great difficulty, and they're almost always alone. And care about them because we're part of the wonderful, beautiful fabric that makes up America, and we deserve to have you care for us like we will care for you.
So reciprocation, I mean, and absolutely amazing, because I think that's really an appropriate. Being on the other side of things, I will just say from an outside perspective, I think that's a really appropriate kind of summation of the transgender community. And I'm very humbled and very appreciative that I got to meet you tonight, because you not only brought like the science and the statistics and the numbers, but you also brought the humor and the humility to it too. So
you realize how rare we are, right? There's more people. Listen,
you're not a Bible thumping.
No.
It's in your head. This is the way it is.
Yeah,
type
there's
of person.
more people that live in Clovis and Fresno than there are transgender people out in the whole United States.
Certainly.
What?
That's how rare we are.
What is it?
And yet you see on TV and on the news why they hate us so much. That's just to get the vote out.
Just so you know, Karen, on the interwebs, someone just said, let Karen know that a white, cis, born-again Christian straight male appreciates her intelligence and poise on tonight's show, and she needs to keep doing things like this.
Oh, cool.
Amen.
Awesome.
Shout out to you.
You know, and
Karen keeps it real.
I like this. We need to do more of these.
Okay.
So we'll bring you back on. We'll talk more, because it's an onion.
Yeah,
we can keep peeling. Layers. We can keep going. I mean, we tried to go blunt here. Obviously, we had the terrorist attack from Captain Asshat, and I love the science. And by the way, Kevin's not here, unfortunately, but the internet did love the fact that Kevin, who is a king on my on the Wednesday night show, got shut down, and with true facts, science, and all that. And he didn't do it in angry, in your face Bible. That's beautiful. And that's what I'm hoping for the kick here. That's what I want from everybody who's around this room, who's listening. It's just our second one.
I came here tonight to have fun, and I think we did.
Did you?
And be sure to subscribe to us, Longbox FM.
In the immortal words of Bush Jr., mission accomplished.
Well, and he didn't even put that sign up, the poor guy. He got blamed for it.
In the words of Obama, it's America's fault that this is happening.
Well,
we just want to thank you, Karen. We really appreciate you.
It was fun.
And everything that you're doing in the Central Valley and beyond. We really appreciate it. It's cool.
Well, and if you hear people, and you people that are out there, if you hear anybody that's using really bad language about transgender people, remember, people used to use the N-word for black people in common conversation, and now that's not acceptable.
Yeah.
Why is it not acceptable? Because the vast number of Americans said, stop saying that. That's wrong. And we need you to stand up for the rare-born transgender people in the same way.
Absolutely.
Women got the rights.
I don't know. I think
then
rap music really put nigger out there for everybody. You know?
No, you mean the blacks got the rights first, then the women?
That's
because black men got the right to vote before women.
Women got the rights. Then the black men got the right, or black people got the rights.
It was black people first, then women.
And yet... And now we're talking about rights for gay transgender, and everything. And yet, women still have not equal pay for equal work.
And there's still racism towards African Americans and other cultures.
Where
and
you're
there's
at,
still
where you're at right now,
homo-malevolent bigotry towards lesbians and
it's
gays.
going to be.
I would just say this
for another century or more.
Like the rap community took the word nigger and turned it into nigga, and it became like they almost took over the word, and it doesn't mean what it used to mean. Like if you said that word back in the 50s, you know what I mean? maybe you guys can take,
We're not gonna and we don't.
I don't think that you can really create an ownership over something like that.
I mean, something.
Karen, really quickly, I just wanted to ask you,
PR,
because we definitely want people to go above and beyond on this show, and so beyond us shutting off the mics and just closing the show down for the night, where are some of the links and where are some of the websites that people can go to learn more about what it is you're all about and to be more educated above and beyond just what we've learned on the Kick tonight?
Well, that's an excellent question. There's the National Center for Gender Equality, which is really, really awesome. You can go there. You can look at the Transgender Law Center, which is over in Oakland, and you can go to their website, and there's a lot of great educational resources.
What's the website there, really quickly?
It's transgenderlawcenter.org. And you can go to theadvocate.com, theadvocate.com, and you can click on the transgender link. It's up to date daily.
Okay.
It's really good.
Okay.
And you can go to huffingtonpost.com, and there's actually Queer Voices, and if you click on Queer Voices, you can go to the transgender link there. And so the latest news generally comes on advocate.com.
Sure.
That's probably the best.
Okay.
And so that's probably the one where you go for any news that comes up. And so that'll help you out a lot. I'm working on right now transcare.org. There's a placeholder site for my transcare.org right now. It's not the real website. I have an expert building a national site that's going to be fantastic, and it's going to be video-oriented. It's going to become a clearinghouse for all things transgender across the United States, and I'm working on that right now.
I was going to say, I've been on there in the last 2 days because I know that you said that the site's under construction, but so far, at least the education portion of it's kind of up, and it's there's some information there, but definitely check back on transcare.org and all of the other sites that Karen's mentioned.
I'm not done. I'm definitely not done with you.
Okay.
Because we're going to have to do this again. We talked about in previous phone calls, gay Captain America. We talked God, there's so much. we could go for another 9 hours here. We'll have to schedule this again.
Yeah.
Yes.
Next week, though, we got Dan Riley. Of course, the guy who's behind the brewing, Riley's Brewing.
Thank you,
He's going to be coming in. And he's not only the guy who makes beer and brings it to us, gives it to us freely every single week. It's so nice. But he's actually getting screwed by California. He's been dealing with HSR, High Speed Rail. They are taking his land. He's already dropped over $100,000.
Oh, no.
And on lawyers. And now they're not only California is coming back and hitting them with not only like the original eminent domain.
Eminent domain.
They got rid of my favorite jacket.
But they have a different version. They keep hitting him with it. We're going to be talking about that as well as whatever pops up in the next week. And if you guys have ideas, you guys listening, if you want something that you want to talk about, you want to be a part of this in any way, this is what we want. This kind of discussion, this kind of fun, this kind of adulting, if you will.
Get active, you guys.
Well, that's what we're hoping for. So hit us up, find us, and we'll bring you on. We'll talk.
Well, and if you want to know more about Karen Adele Scott, you can go on Google, and you can Google me, Karen Adele Scott, and you can find I have videos out there. I have educational videos, public service announcements, speeches, and you can go on YouTube, and you can also search me on YouTube, Karen Adele Scott, and you can see a lot of the stuff that I've put out there too, and hopefully that'll help you to know who I am.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Stay informed, you guys. It's really important. Subscribe to us, Longbox FM. If you like the Kick, call in, be active, you guys. We encourage it.
And with that, I just want to add real quickly before we close this. I just want to say that this is our second episode, and I want to thank everybody that's viewed us so far. I want to thank everybody that's thrown some input out there. I really want to thank everybody that's called in, even though we may have some phone issues from time to time. But, we're working on that pro setup. Listen, the Kick was exactly what you thought it was going to be. It was going to be real views, unfiltered. It was going to be everything that you wanted it to be. And I want to thank everybody for viewing us and for sharing the love and for spreading the Facebook post, the Facebook and everything else. Chris, thank you for putting this together.
I'd just like to say, Chris, I'd like to thank you for having me back. I know I haven't been on the show in a long time. This is Thick Vic here. I've been talking tonight. Wasn't ever
my
formally
OG
introduced.
Co-host on
wasn't ever formally introduced on the entire show.
I'm bad with introductions.
I just want to say it's nice to be back and to do this. It was fun. Thank you for letting me come tonight.
Final thing, question, Karen.
Yeah.
What's your Twitter?
Oh, Twitter, it's at Karen Adele Scott.
All right, there you go. That answers the question from the interwebs. And for this...
one T in Scott.
It's time to... I guess you guys can go back to your induced sleep. I hope you got something from tonight. Next week we'll have some fun. And for now, this is for me, for everyone else. Thanks for joining the Kick.
Palabras.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
See you later.
Stay woke.
Fun show, guys. Fun show.
For some fledgling like this, I can honestly say that this is probably. I mean, this is our second episode. This is our second episode, and it's probably
Best show out of two.
the most fulfilling.
It's gonna grow,
yet.
guys. This is gonna grow.
Well,
You
there's
guys have a great
there's
group.
History, there's knowledge behind all this.
Well, the
And I
thing
can
is, in
see it.
order for it to really grow, we got to get rid of Vanna, then we have to get rid of Kevin. Eventually, Chris has to go, and then I have to
I'm
go, and
waiting
4
for
people
that.
have to replace us.
Can we
And then I will
And Vince will
remain
be the
because I
last
never
one,
talk.
right here.
Can we
You're like,
can
you're
we
like the
get
Red
a
Queen
group shot?
presiding over everything.
Yeah, group shot up near back towards the TV.
Okay.
Do you want me to take
You
it?
need a cardboard cutout of Kevin. When he bails out like a little bitch.
Do you have a picture of Kevin?
Stay up another
You can
30
hold a
minutes.
picture of my phone of Kevin.
He leaves
The guy
early
looks like his own
often.
cardboard cutout.
I mean, we couldn't stay for 30 more minutes because he's got to be up.
Chris, do you want me to take
Deal
the
with it.
picture?
No, I'm good. You know I don't like to be in pictures.
I'll take
Right.
this sweater off. This ain't me.
How many times have we listened to this song?
This is a close.
It is a fun
Well, I
How many
heard it.
times have you heard this song?
Well, I heard it a million times before he heard it on Inception.
Look up my when I was on NBC.com.
Is that what this is?
I actually, I knew the
Look at
song
my
before.
interview today.
It's the music they listen to.
Yeah.
I hated that movie.
And then Daily Mail Online in
I have
London.
to say, I love how
I know, I
well-spoken you
remember
are.
you.
Like,
you.
you're
Alright.
just like, honestly, you make sense to anybody.
Uh-huh.
Like,
Well, you know why? 32 years of science teaching, and I was a public affairs officer in the military.
wow.
I followed generals with cameras and took pictures, movies, and wrote newspaper articles.
That's so
And you know all of that one.
Yeah, make sure you get a good clean one.
If you don't make the general look good, you're in trouble.
And
Oh,
probably for
you're right
here
in the
so you
center.
can lean in and try to get underneath the 360.
You're right.
Yeah, tall.
Well,
I'm 5'11".
I'm
You're
4'9"
taller,
and
so
big
you're
40
strong.
I'm legally a little person.
Are you guys ready?
Word.
Yeah, I'm just taking like a lot.
I mean,
the monkey shot
She's
going.
so
You're
cute.
It was fun.
Okay.
You gotta have Matt on again too.
Oh, seriously?
Now you know why Matt is. He's like, I raised Matt.
I apologize if I said anything to offend you. I
Can I
just
still
don't.
hug you?
I don't care you're having different opinions. So
I have to hug you. Like,
I like
I
that
love
you had
your
different
face.
opinions. What do you think makes good radio?
I know. So,
Oh, we all
I love
agree
it.
here. Well, we're just gonna go like.
Yeah, that was
that
last
was
week.
episode 1.
Thank you, Marines.
I just have to say, I love your brain. Like, seriously, like, the fact that you're scientific and, like, that you, I respect you so much.
Well, I
I'm so
had to-
honored
I had
to
to-
work with you. Like,
I know. I had to understand myself. I studied.
Are you
That's
leaving
awesome.
right now or are you staying
Oh, I
sticking
thought I
around
might
for a
finish
bit?
my beer.
Okay, awesome.
I didn't drink on the air.
I know, I
I
know.
have
now
a
you
beer
can.
left.
And I
It's
was
really good beer.
Right? I love Riley's.
Yeah?
Riley's.
I really do.
Oh,
Riley's
it's
is
good.
Awesome.
Seriously, oh my gosh, it's so rich and flavorful.
It really is.
Yeah.
I don't normally like beer. I only drink local
See,
beer.
and I could be on shows where it's maybe not a transgender issue, because actually having gay and lesbian people and transgender people on where it has nothing to do with them, it just shows diversity.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
No,